This is very near and dear to me. It's the vulnerability line. How much honesty is really good for our businesses? After all, we're encouraged to be so honest and so out there and so vulnerable. Where do we draw the line with that? And the answer is simple, but also not simple. It's about being real, but not too real. We're told to open up. We're all told to share our struggles, talk about things like burnout, personal issues, the messy side or the messy middle of life. And honestly, it works. Like when I talk about my issues, my struggles, all that sort of thing, it's the stuff that gives me the most capture of reach. It gives me the most feedback. It gives me the most amount of stuff that people want to come back to me with and interact with my post, because vulnerability builds trust. It's about personality, right? But there has to be some kind of line, and I certainly have developed that line myself, because what you share doesn't just reflect on you, it reflects your team, it reflects your clients, it reflects the people who trust you, investors, if you're looking for that kind of thing, and long-term reputation as well. And whilst, know, like, trust is a very important process we go through, the knowing side of it needs to be finely balanced, not just simply blare out all of my issues and all my problems. So what we build is a bit of a trust engine around all this. And Brene Brown says really well here, vulnerability is not about winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome. Vulnerability, in its most positive way, shows you're very present, that you're not putting on some sort of performance, unless you're the crying CEO of a company, that was very famous a couple of years ago on LinkedIn. But it also is about being relatable, not polished. Honest brands and honest people are very human. Polished ones feel very corporate. It feels like an ad. Every time you get onto LinkedIn, you see something which is just a little bit too polished, or you get on Instagram and it's a little too perfect. We're usually saying it's either AI or it's an ad. And we have been trained over 30 years of internet usage that ads are something that we actively avoid. I don't even remember the last time I noticed a banner ad on a website. They're still there. They're still really common, but I just don't notice them anymore because my eyes are being trained away from them all. And vulnerability is quite an important thing because it's about this story-led connection where your audience sees themselves in some of what you're telling as well. Your journey is their journey. Your humanity is their humanity. It also gives you a little bit of a competitive edge because most people tend to hide behind, my business does this, I do this. Here's me beside a pull-up banner, standing in a very awkward pose. That sort of stuff is just, it doesn't connect with anybody. It may generate an automatic response of congratulations, but it doesn't do anything else. It certainly doesn't lead to anyone wanting to know you more. It doesn't lead to them knowing you more. It doesn't lead to them wanting to work any further with you. And whilst it gives trust through integrity, it doesn't necessarily bring trust through that knowing and liking stage as well. Honesty is not the same as blurting everything out, right? There's what I call strategic honesty. And this is what I use. I share a lesson after I've processed it, not mid-lesson after I've learned it, right? So it often is around sharing failures, but I don't talk about the failure right when I'm in the middle of it. That would just be silly because I haven't processed any of it yet. I'm still in the emotional throes of the chaos of that struggle. It's also about naming a challenge while showing how you navigate it. It's one thing saying, I went through this horrible thing, it was awful, but what next? What came next? You're obviously still here today. So what did that a massive amount of upheaval in your life actually bring about? Was there a lesson to be learned from it? Is there a way that you can tell me that if this happens to me, how I can navigate my way through it? It's about being honest in a way that helps, doesn't just bring attention to yourself. And it's about serving your audience, not just yourself. You may think, I need to get this off my chest. That's what you do with therapists, not with social media, for example. How does this story serve them? Not how does this affect my therapy and treating social media like therapy? So emotional oversharing, like posting mid-crisis before you resolved it, means you actually haven't got the lesson. There is no lesson there. There's just simply bleh, right? Venting frustration with clients and staff or partners is right in the middle of all that. So you've just worked with a client and then you trash them, like you think they're not going to recognize that that's who you're talking about, even if you don't mention the names. And making your audience worry about your capacity is a complete opposite of trust. Okay, trust is brought about through vulnerability, saying, I went through this, I learned this. What a great lesson. I moved on, rather than I'm in the middle of a crisis. Oh my God, I'm falling apart. Nothing's going right. I'm thinking my business is going to go under. How do your clients feel about that? Not particularly great, right? And then using your platform as therapy, like I said before, rather than as a way of showing leadership. The question is not so much, should I do this? It's more really about, who do I serve through sharing this? Does this help someone? Is this helpful? Is it edifying? Is it uplifting? Or is it just me needing to get it off my chest? So there's a bit of a framework here. It's a failure framework. And the first thing we need to do is, if we're talking about failure, number one, we've got to do it after the failure, not in the middle of the failure when we're still very emotionally involved with the failure. First of all, we need to name the failure. Don't minimize it. Don't dress it up. I failed at this, right? Naming it means that it sort of takes the sting out of it, but owning it takes it a step further. Where you're not blaming anyone else. You're not sorry, I lost my words. You're not necessarily saying this happened to me. You're saying I made this happen. That's what owning it is. It's not saying, oh, this happened. It's saying I did this. I caused this. That's great. But we need to then move on into the learning front. What actually changed in your life, in your business? What did you take away from this? What was the big lesson about life or business that came as a result of you getting out the other end of this? And then the fourth bit, just as important as number three, is, what's the next step? How did I grow? Not just the lesson, how did I grow? What's the future look like because of this? So what we're doing, we first of all name what the failure was. We own that we were responsible for it. 3, here's what I learned from it, and here's how I move on. Here's how I move forward. This is helpful because many of us have the same kind of failures. There's not a lot that's unique between us all when it comes to business. We all go through the same kind of, excuse me. We all, I don't have like an allergic reaction to something in this room. We all have these very common kinds of challenges in business and in our careers. But this framework of naming it, owning it, learning from it, and landing it becomes helpful content if that's what you want to do, if you want to add some of that vulnerability into what you're doing. Now, the 5 common mistakes that people do make, and you do see quite, oh God, all the time, you see someone going on a rant. They post in real time during a moment of distress. They're still in a storm. They're still in the thick of it. They're very emotional, and the audience does feel like they're being treated like a sounding board or a therapist. They can't hold this crisis for you. In fact, that's not their. Oh, that sneeze again. That's not their job. Sorry. Vulnerability as victimhood means, by you're trying to get some empathy and sympathy from people. Things like, oh, I struggled. Yeah, I struggled does build some empathy. I say, I struggled, and you go, yeah, I've struggled with that too. That's empathy. But everything like saying, everyone let me down. Oh, I was a victim of this. Everything happened to me. That erodes trust and makes you look like a chronic victim. There's someone with a victim attitude, which is not something that a client wants to see, right? They see that and they think, oh God, if they're going to get something wrong, they're going to own it, then they're going to try and hide it, then they're going to gaslight me, and yeah, I'm not going to work with them. Also, undermining a team publicly. I've seen this happen. My team let me down. This happened. This failed. Someone didn't do this. Sharing how hard things are right now because of what you're going through, without considering how it lands for the people who are in your care, staff, investors, business partners, all that sort of thing, is just dirty. It's actually dirty work. Forming vulnerability is where you're putting on the vulnerability. You're being really fake. You're trying to chase likes by being brave and courageous rather than actually sharing a lesson. And where you see the big difference in performance vulnerability, I see, is where they're talking, it usually is accompanied by some kind of cute selfie. You'll see it's like a cute selfie of someone going, and standing in a really pose where they're literally bringing attention to themselves, and then the selfie and the story don't match. They're not the same thing. I know that you could probably say, oh, this is me after I came through. Look how happy I am. Look how hot I am. It's usually thirst trapping as a way to attract likes. So if you see that kind of picture with that kind of story, they're generally thirst trapping and fishing for likes. And there's no filter between journaling and the platform. Not everything true needs to be published. This is a really, really key thing. That's something I actually want to put that up in front of my computer at my desk. Not everything true needs to be public. Some things are for therapists and friends to be discussing with, or your partner. Some things are for LinkedIn. Not everything, right? So the share filter is a bit of a really clever filter that I've actually got that I use. So before I go, okay, I want to talk about something personal here on LinkedIn or somewhere else, I've got to go through this. And the number one rule is the S, the settled. Have I already settled on this? Is it processed, or am I still in the middle of it? If it fails that and I'm still in the middle of it, it doesn't get shared. If it does get past that, it gets on the H. Is this helpful? Does this serve my audience or mainly myself? And this is a checklist, literally, that I have that's in my AI that helps me to filter through this and ask the question, does this serve my audience or mainly myself? And I have to say how this serves my audience. Number 3, aware. Am I aware of how this affects my team and stakeholders? So I ask my AI the sequence to say, okay, how does this affect my team and stakeholders if I share this? If I continue on, R is recoverable. And that's, can I stand behind this in 12 months if it spreads? If this story spreads, can I still be okay with the fact that I shared this in 12 months' time? And that's very hard because humans are very bad at thinking in terms of future consequences. We're very much in the now. So thinking of the future consequences doesn't come naturally to us. So this stops and makes you think, okay, if I'm in a different place in a different way in 12 months' time and this resurfaces, is this something I can recover from? And then finally, if I go, okay, all 4 of those are fine. The E is elevating. Does this lift people up or leave them worried about me? So if I want to leave them worried about me, I'm fishing for likes. I'm looking for sympathy. I'm looking for a therapist, right? But if it's elevating, and in this order, this is how I decide whether a personal story is worth going for. If I answer at least 4 of those 5, if I can't answer at least a yes to at least 4 of them, then save it for private conversation. The only 2 I'll wobble on is perhaps the question of the H or the E. Does it serve the audience or only myself? And then is it elevating? So I'll swap those around because they're kind of the same thing. If it's helpful or elevating, I might okay, this doesn't lift them up, but it doesn't also leave them worried about me. I might take that one off. But generally, that's how I do it. It's actually literally a sequence that I do through my Gemini that allows me to brainstorm through whether what I'm planning to write is worth sharing with. There's also a way of you need to find your line, whether you're going to be too guarded and too corporate with only sharing the wins, only sharing, the joyful moments. There's no real connection in there. You want to, respect everything, and that's that. You see like that, the performative social media of Instagram, but the flavor of Instagram inside LinkedIn. Then there's also the too exposed, right? Where you're too exposed, that means you're exposing the unprocessed pain, you're exposing anxiety, you're exposing worries, you're exposing that people can't really trust in you right now. So you need to find your line somewhere between those and find a sweet spot, right? So you don't want to be too corporate, too untouchable, too respected but not connected. You don't want to be too exposed with all this unprocessed pain and an audience worrying about you. You want the sweet spot, the balanced spot, which is honest plus reflective plus forward momentum equals trust and connection. That's a great little formula there. Honest, reflective, forward momentum. So here's what happened. Here's how I worked through this. Here's where I'm going now. That leads to trust and connection. That's where you find your balance. If you can't find that within the content you're looking at putting out there, it's probably performative. You're probably in the middle of it until too emotionally connected to it right now to be able to really make this into content. Remember, this is not a reality show. This is not Married at First Sight. We don't want to be those people. What we want to do is, yes, we want to be professional. At the same time, develop that personal link to people so they feel like they know you, like you, and then feel like they can trust you. Trust is very, very, very fragile. So, human incredible, you want to be able to take that on board at the same time. You don't want to be human and credible, or I'd say not just credible, professional, human and professional. So this is where you will go, I'm leading with my expertise. I'm an expert in this. And I've worked really hard to overcome some of the challenges I've had to face. So vulnerability, the actual content isn't about vulnerability. Vulnerability is a flavor you put into it, if that makes sense. So we're not saying, I really felt bad the day that I did this. What you're doing, you're leading with the vulnerability. What you need to do is lead with the expertise. You go, right now, I'm at the top of my game, but it wasn't always this way. And that's where you then spice it up with that. You use the past tense rule. I went through, rather than I am going through. This happened rather than this is happening. So if you're saying right now, this is happening, I am feeling this right now, it's too raw, it's too real, it's too emotional right now, it doesn't belong on LinkedIn. Then separate your identity from the event. I failed at this is not the same as I am a failure. I failed is one thing. I am a failure. You need to get rid of the I am. One is about leading to growth because you failed at this, then this happened. One is painting you as a very specific kind of person that sends massive red flags to anyone who wants to employ you, anyone who wants to work with you. There's no credibility in saying, I am a failure. So authority isn't about being Mr. or Mrs. Perfect. It's about picking up those lessons from life, bringing them in and letting them change you enough to move forward so you can lead through difficult times in the future. So we're nearly there. Your vulnerability policy needs to involve some very interesting little ideas, right? The 24-hour rule. You never post about something emotional within 24 hours of experiencing it, because you are still too raw. It's still running through your head, stopping you from sleeping, making you emotional. So it's too soon. You need to let it off another at least 24 hours. I would say a week. Leave it for a week at least before you can objectively start talking about it in a way that isn't fueled by emotional fire and thoughts of revenge and thoughts of upsetting and disappointment. When you do this, it allows you to look at it more objectively and be more philosophical about it. You can see the lesson. You can see your role in this. You're not in the, this happened to me, everybody's trying to get me phase. Second one's dinner party test is, would you actually share this with strangers at a dinner party? If you met these people for the very first time at a dinner party, is this the kind of conversation you'd have with them? If not, dump it. It's too much. It's too raw, right? Too emotional. The screenshot test, if someone screenshotted part of this conversation and they passed it on completely out of context, would it make you look bad? Would you look really, really awkward and uncomfortable about this? Because that's also what needs to be considered before you share personal stuff. Then there's a team test. Would your employees feel proud? Would they feel anxious? If they were working with you and they saw that this is what you're going through, well, then that's something to really consider, because they are in your care. You have a duty of care to your staff to make sure that they feel safe. If they're like, oh my God, my boss is an absolutely emotional wreck right now, they have no ground for trust there. Now, does it mean that you have to put on this brave, stoic Viking face that you can face anything that's coming up to you? No, of course not. That's why we can talk about these things in the past, not these things we're going through right now. Saying that I went through some mental health issues and I came out at the other end with some really good outlook on life and some really good tools moving forward, that's uplifting. It shows you've done the work and you're not in the middle of it now. And then the legacy test. In 5 years' time, will what I've said today come back to haunt me? Will it reflect the leader I'm becoming? Or is it only about who I was in the past? These are all flavors to put in there. So I've got a bit of a guide coming up that you'll be able to put a lot of this in and use it for things like your AI training to make sure that you actually have a test in there. One of those things I do have is, I'm giving a personal story. The next step is it asks me, okay, have you put this through the share test? And then I go, no. I go, okay, I'll begin the share test. And it puts it through the share test and tells me whether it fails or whether it passes. So it's just an automated, not automated because it's still step by step. I'm human in the loop with it all, but it does help me to work through that. If I'm talking about something that's too raw, it picks me up and says, not continuing. Not everything true needs to be public. Keep private any active disputes you have with people who are working with you, for you, or around you. Any financial stresses you're going through, keep them private. They're not resolved yet. They do not get talked about. You cannot talk about other people's stories without their consent, and don't think that by not using their name that they won't recognize their story in there. You have to change stories massively to make them completely unrecognizable as their story. Anything that creates legal or contractual exposure, that's to keep private. This is very logical stuff. Mental health struggles without professional support. So if you're just airing out your mental struggles right now, that is a massive red flag. What is safe to share is the lessons that you've learned from those challenges, the reflections you have on an industry or business culture, not what you're going through with that culture. Moments of doubt that led to something else. There will be clarity, it'll be growth, it'll be your future direction, all that stuff. Acknowledging privilege is really important, I think. When you say, look, I will talk all about vulnerability, but I'm not a young woman wearing a hijab, so I can speak to it from, a big burly gym going bloke who's white in a country that is majority white, and I can move around like the world is mine, but that's not the way other people live their lives necessarily. Acknowledging privilege, acknowledging luck, help from others, that's actually really cool to share, because you're not just saying, hey, I did this all on my own, look at me, I'm a hero. You're saying, I've had a lot of help on the way too, and I need to acknowledge those people because they made me the person I am today. And then normalizing the emotional reality of leadership. Yes, it's hard being a leader because this, and this. So what I'm doing to help myself get this done better is doing this, and this. That's the safe stuff to share. Your line gets drawn where you feel comfortable sharing it. Ultimately, these are just principles that can help you out if you choose to follow them. If you're a founder, a business owner, someone getting started, and you want to build lasting trust with clients and people who work with you, then you don't share everything. You share the right things at the right time for the right reasons. You're not trying to be performative about it. You're being human, you're being honest, and you're being very, very strategic about doing that as well. So what I want you to take away is that share filter, the SHARE filter, which I think has really changed the way I've approached the whole vulnerability talk. The vulnerability spectrum, find a zone, have a guarded, between guarded and exposed, and then that sweet spot that's in between them. The failure formula, by naming it, owning it, learning it, and landing it. And those 5 practical tests, like the 24-hour rule. Is it 24 hours since this happened? Well, it's not enough. You need to wait longer. Or the dinner party rule. Would I share this with complete strangers at a dinner party? What I'll do to make that easier, I've got my normal, little guide, so you can keep the journey going with your at-home learning guide there. Just scan the QR code and that will get that through to you. It's got quite a comprehensive interactive guide with notes that you can put in there to help you to work that kind of stuff out.